And 1, 2, 3, we are live with the Oregon Grape. I'm Eli Doyle, and we have in the studio Josephine County Commissioner John West. Mr. West, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
How's the week been? You were out at Saturday Market talking with the public. What's that experience been like?
It was great. I got a lot of great feedback, a lot of questions, and I thought it was a super day. Probably one of the best days I've had in quite a while. Was able to answer a lot of questions. A lot of people confused over the recall.
Yeah, I mean, I know that just myself personally, getting to have the first look at it when I first met the people doing their booth, and then researching later. It's like anything. Your opinion changes as you learn more. But you essentially have been out there most Saturdays, I guess in a way, kind of defending your name. Have you spoken with the petitioners since you've been there, or is it just like not interested? Or
nope, I let them do what they want to do, and I do what I need to do. So it keeps us from arguing. Yeah,
we wouldn't want to have the growers market manager come out there and break up a fight or anything.
Right.
Yeah. Well, good deal. Well, one of the things is obviously we're going to talk about the petition to recall. We're going to get into the details of it, and I'll let you kind of explain your side of it. But also, I feel like just for the viewers' sake, it would be interesting to learn a little bit about who you are as a person and kind of how you got started. And so I wanted to ask you basically, what is your life in the private sector been like? How did you get your business started? Are you a Grants Pass local? Did you move up? When did you move up? That sort of thing.
So I was born on Dimmick Street, where the old hospital was, and then
I was born in that hospital.
Yeah, there's a bunch of us, and so then our family moved to Wolf Creek, stayed in Josephine County, and then we moved on the other side of the hill to Glendale, and that's where I graduated high school. In Glendale. Okay. But I spent most of my time in Grants Pass. And so then I went to college, graduated as a forester, and then come back to Grants Pass.
Why were you interested in forestry?
Just because my dad was a sawmill worker and I was a woods guy. Hunting, fishing, everything to do with the woods, I was in it.
So did you follow along with that path? Did you do some work in forestry?
Yeah, I worked as a log scaler, Roseburg Forest Products. I worked for those companies till 1992. Okay. And then I went out on my own, started my own forestry business, timber business. And from there, I've been on my own since.
Has it been mostly timber? Has that mostly been the industry you've been involved with?
So I've got in. I have a mining company, gold mining company, and I also have a land development company. So I only develop in the rural county. I'm not much for developing in the city. Too many hurdles to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. So is gold mining a big industry nowadays still? Are there still people out there? You got people with pickaxes and whatnot, or?
Yep. Well, I think it was.
I imagine the technology's advanced more, but I just, I picture Yosemite Sam or something.
Well, I think it was close to 2,600 an ounce this morning. So an ounce is not very much, when you look at it. And so, everybody's looking for the mother lode.
Yeah.
And so I have a snowcat business, Tucker Snowcats, and I service different cell tower companies, Pacific Power Light, all those. I have a partner in that. And so I'm pretty diversified. I have a firefighting business. In fact, I still have guys working on that right now with heavy equipment. And so, I've been in the private sector all my life, and I seen Oregon going downhill. I seen Josephine County. I felt like it was going downhill. They needed leadership, and I didn't know what to do, and so I was going to move. I was going to sell everything out and move. I was going to move to Idaho, where I could still have the firefighting business, because I could still service Oregon. Because I was within that 450-mile range.
These industries, the mining, the firefighting, and are you still involved in timber?
A little bit. I still have some forestry timber ground.
These are these still actively running? And what's your part in them? Do you have people managing them for you, or?
So I have some guys that runs the firefighting business. I've done nothing with it this summer. They ran the whole thing for me. And that was something that when I ran for county commissioner, I was asked, because I have 4 or 5 different companies, and they said, well, how do we know you're not going to be managing your companies and you're really going to be working for the taxpayer? And I said, the ones that I don't have quality people to run them, I'll shut them down and they'll sit idle until I'm no longer commissioner.
Were they worried about a conflict of interest, or they worried about your time not being able to serve the people?
They were worried about my time.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I've been committed. I put in 60 plus hours every week for the taxpayers.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, that's actually one of the things I wanted to ask you about, is like what the actual day-to-day of being a county commissioner looks like. And is it a 9 to 5? Do you put your own hours in, but it's a lot, or how does it work?
So we're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if the sheriff has an issue, or we have a fire, or we have a flood, or we have any sort of thing, different emergency parts of Josephine County calls you. They keep you updated. We may have to get out of bed and go because there's an issue. We may have to call an emergency meeting. All those, but our normal meetings are Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And so Mondays and Fridays, I try to visit the public as much as possible, and then squeeze them in those other days. But I need to be in the office a certain amount of time, because there's people that comes by that wants to visit and wants to talk and tell me their problems. I was out in Merlin today dealing with some citizens' mailbox got ran over by a dump truck of the county. And so I was out looking at that. I'm constantly out looking at something, a complaint somebody has. Sometimes they're valid. Sometimes I just say, listen, there's nothing I can do for you because you kind of created your problem.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not. But I would say right now, I've been able to resolve about 80% of the issues. So I feel confident and good about that we're going the right direction. And it doesn't mean that the county's done wrong. It's just that maybe there was some communication gap. And people really like it that I listen, I show up, they can talk to me, and so that's important.
Is it really important to be able to have that like 24/7 access to a commissioner? Is it mostly like emergency sort of situations of like you need to make a decision about a fire or a crisis or something? Like, is that's something that they kind of like make you agree to when you sign up for the job?
No, if you look at the charter, you only have to make one meeting, and you could take the rest of the time off and never show up to a meeting again.
So is this a personal choice you make to make yourself accessible that often?
Well, I think it is for all good commissioners. I think they make themselves available to the citizens because that's who they serve. And I believe we've had some great commissioners in the past. I think we've had a few that were a little lazy, but you get that in everything you do. And so, I get calls on the weekends. I get text messages. I get pictures sent to me, and that's part of the job.
Yeah,
that's the way I look at it. Even if this recall wasn't going on, I would probably still set up a table at the farmers market and just have my sign that I'm your county commissioner, and I just ask people when they go by.
Yeah, basically just make yourself accessible to the people.
What do you think?
Yeah. I can tell you that as a citizen and also as running this podcast, it was nice to have you be so accessible and be like, oh, there's our county commissioner. I can go chat with him. Yeah, make him come, talk on a podcast. Yeah.
Hey, that's the part that citizens want to know, is that you really care.
Yeah.
And that you're open, and that they can ask you. They can tell me what they think. I don't have to like it, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think getting into a position like that, you basically have to be comfortable with the idea that you're going to be scrutinized and that people are not going to like you. That's just one of the problems with, or not problem, but just one of the things about putting yourself in the public eye is you just got to be ready for that.
Well, so one of my worries coming from the private sector was I'm not a politician. I didn't, even though I graduated in forestry, speech class wasn't one of my great things to take. So, I'm not a polished speaker. I don't say all the right, perfect things. And that's what people like about me. They feel like
it does have a sense of realness to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I say some off the wall stuff that some people look at me and go, "Are you allowed to say that?" And I said, "Well, I think I am."
Guess we'll find out. The Mail Tribune's going to let us know.
Oh yeah. And the Courier runs a story, and I'm like, oh, well, somebody says, you ought to go to Toastmasters or somebody, one of them groups and work on your speaking. And I said, nah. I said, I think the public likes hearing it just how it is.
Well, what I think is interesting is so I've done like a fair amount of public speaking myself. I had people start requesting me to DJ for weddings and MC different events and things. And it was, I had no experience with speaking in front of crowds. It was just that I had the, I don't know, like the moxie, the guts, to just do it. And I feel like that's a huge part of it. But also I think if you're confident in yourself, and also if you believe the things that you're saying and you have sort of a dedication to truth, then I think the fear of public speaking often goes away, because at the end of the day, as long as you were saying things that you believe in and that you think are good, then it doesn't really matter what people are going to say, because one thing that we know about putting yourself in the public eye is, like we said, like you're going to be scrutinized one way or the other.
The first month and a half, I went home every week, every day, and said, what the heck did I get myself into?
Yeah.
Because everybody was scrutinizing, everybody was pointing their finger, what do you know? Why'd you say this? And I'm like, I just told you how I feel and how I see it.
Yeah.
And I had people inside the county, you're supposed to stick up for us no matter what. And I said, listen, you don't work and serve the people of Josephine County. I said it in my campaign. You might want to get a job elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I meant it.
Yeah.
And I still mean it today. The taxpayers pay very good money for service and to be respected and to be heard. And, there's times that I don't think that happens. And so it really saddens me. And I'm just one of 3 commissioners. There's 3 of us, but it didn't take me long to learn. You have to learn to count to 2.
And what do you mean by that?
Because you have 3 commissioners and it takes 2 votes to pass anything.
Yeah.
So, when I first started I didn't get that second vote, and I'm like, okay, I have to learn to count to 2 here,
Yeah.
And so, and it didn't take me long, and I figured it out that, okay, I need to do better about selling my position and selling why I think this is so important.
What's funny is I feel like I can actually really relate with you on this, because when you come from the private sector, especially if you're in the authority position, there is no counting to 2. It's 1. It's me. I get to make the decision. This is what I think is best. That's how we're going to move forward. And the benefit of that is that decisions are made so quick and it just seems so efficient. And my family, we lived and grew up here in Grants Pass. I have been an employee for maybe 3 months out of my entire life. Besides that, I was always working with family businesses and managing people and different things. And you really get used to that ability to just make decisions very quickly. My first experience having to work with another group was I was on the Grants Pass Growers Market board for like a year. And I realized how frustrating it was when you would come in and you would be like, listen, I know the solution here. And I have to convince all of you guys before we can just do what we know is right, And so it's an interesting thing to learn. And that's, I'm sure that's been a challenge for you, because when you come from the private sector, it's the opposite of how you normally have to think.
It was only me.
Yeah.
I made all the decisions. I lived with the decision I made. It either cost me or I was okay. But I really like us having 3 on the board.
Yeah.
Because, something that I'm thinking may not always be exactly right. And one of the other commissioners will say something and it'll spark, and I'll go, I like that. It kind of brings you back around. And that's why I say all the time, people hear me all the time, we're a board of 3, not a board of 1. And so I think it's important that we never lose sight of that, because 3 people thinking, talking, discussing things out normally is going to be better than just one person getting in and going down a road, and you can veer off and go the wrong way if you're just one person. And I've seen it in my private life and business life where I thought, boy, everything was just perfect, and I needed somebody to help steer me back. And so that's why I really like the board of 3.
Yeah. Well, and really, like, one of the benefits that you get there when you're working with a board of 3 or when you're working with a group in general is that even if you have an idea and you believe in it, sometimes you can test the value of your idea by how well you can explain it and convince someone else of it. And honestly, in a way, obviously, you have to consider if the other person is even open-minded or not. But if you can't convey your idea to someone and kind of convince them, then is it really a good idea? And do you even believe in it very much? And obviously you're going to deal with people who are just closed-minded no matter what. But there's a part to it that's like that.
Yeah, it's so we have to make decisions. What's best for the county? What's best for the taxpayer, the citizen? So we got roughly 88,000, I think it's 88,900 and some people, somebody said, and 965 or 915. If I was saying this in front of the courier and got it off by one person, I'd get crucified. So
yeah, you got to be careful.
Yeah. So you're not going to make everybody happy.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, right now, I'm on a mission to cut as much overhead as we can cut, make us the most efficient we can be, bringing the motor pool in, trying to get rid of up to 25 cars. And instead of vehicles sitting there, we have people that has a vehicle and they only put 800 miles a year on it. So if we have a motor pool and those people, you take 25 departments, now they check out 1 or 2 vehicles, and we can get rid of 25 vehicles.
These you're talking about county-owned vehicles?
Yeah, county-owned, owned by the taxpayer. Mm-hmm. We pay for the vehicle, we pay for the auto insurance, the maintenance, the upkeep on it. So let's cut that out. And I mean, I look at vehicles just sitting there, and I'm like, man, they never move. But it cost us. And so as we're seeing a contraction and we're seeing the economy go, I don't want to lay people off that are doing the work and keep a vehicle that's sitting there. I'd rather get rid of vehicles that don't move and keep people that work.
Sounds reasonable.
The people serve the citizens. The car's not serving them very well, So, but it doesn't set well with some department heads, and it's just like management. We've gotten overtopped with management, and those are our most expensive people. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I can get 2 people for the cost of one.
What is the average salary of a management position for a county authority figure?
Average for a director in Josephine County is $201,398. That's fully loaded.
Wow.
That's fully loaded. Everything.
That's a yearly salary.
Well, that's PERS, insurance, that's a whole 9 yards. That's fully loaded.
So basically
person.
The taxpayer's expense. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the average.
Okay.
So when you look at it and you're like, ooh, then you got managers underneath it. I'm not sure the manager's exact average salary underneath that. And then you go underneath that, and in some places, some people have leads underneath that, and then you go to the average worker. So I think our payroll is around 50 million or a little more.
Okay.
That's big.
Yeah, that's up there. Yeah. Yeah.
It is. And you ask yourself, what am I getting for that? So
Do you recall the annual budget in general for the county? Wasn't it? I might be having this number
I think
wrong,
it
but
was
900
we
million or
closed
something.
178 million this year.
Oh, I was way off. 178 million was the budget.
Right.
Okay, so when you talk about 50 million being, employees, that's a pretty big chunk of it. Yeah.
Not quite a third of it.
Not quite a third, yeah.
Yeah. And so, when you see an insurance bill come in at $1 million or more, you're like, wow, $1 million insurance bill?
Yeah.
I mean, everything is big.
Yeah.
And so, it's just one of those things that, there was $11 million removed from the budget this year.
Yeah.
Now, that's because we had money that didn't come in from grants. And so we're about 83% grant funded.
Well, that's actually one thing that I wanted to ask you about, because one of the things when we were doing the research for this petition to recall is I noticed that there was this kind of claim in there that, John West had cost the county somewhere around $6.4 million or something in revenue. And one of my first thoughts was, whenever you hear government talking about money, they throw out a number like this many million, this many billion. And my thought that I've learned to go to is, okay, but what is that actually in terms of like the percentage of the budget for the actual county? Because like 6.4 million for me means that I don't have to work for the next 20 years, right? But what does that actually mean for the county? And so I looked at what the budgets were over the past few years, and it fluctuates quite a bit. You obviously weren't in until 2023, or were you were 2023? So you weren't until 2023, so you didn't even have anything to do with the past budgets. But we were at something like 196 million in 2023, and then the one for 2024 that you worked on and approved was, like you said, 11 million less. It was like 186 million or something like that. And then the year before that, 2022, was actually way less. It was 176 million. And so
we're at 178 this year.
You're at 178 for 2025, or
they went, the 24-25 budget is 178.
Maybe that's what I was thinking of.
So the 22 budget went down from 190 something to 186.
Yeah.
And so we dropped 11 million. I think it was 188. We dropped $11 million.
Yeah.
And I expect it won't surprise me to see it drop another 10 million.
Well, and the thing is that was kind of the main point I was making, was that the fluctuation from year to year is significant, sometimes 10 million or more, right? And so what I wanted to know is, how did the county do this year, the 2023 to 2024, in terms of actual revenue? Because you guys cut around 11 million from the budget, but was that of necessity, or was that because you were truly getting rid of waste? How did we actually do in terms of revenue this past year or so?
So we didn't actually necessarily cut the full 11 million, because there was some of it was grants that departments had. And so those grants got eliminated, state and federal. So when the grant gets eliminated, the program gets eliminated, because we don't have the tax money to fix it. And
it's
so,
not county funded; it's a federal grant.
And so
You're good. He's just giving me the 5-minute signal.
Okay, so we're seeing what we're seeing is we're continuing. We've already heard there's going to be some more grants cut, some more. We just don't know how much. So
that's just because the federal state of things, that there isn't as much money to.
The states having some financial troubles too.
So the county receives for different various programs, both state and federal funding, depending on the program. Okay.
So we had in public health, we had what was called Healthy Start. Mm-hmm. It was only a 1-year program, and it was funded for 1 year. It's gone. It went away.
Oh, interesting.
So, there's nothing we can do.
This is really the type of stuff that unless you sit down and you talk about it, people aren't going to know about. They're just going to look like, oh, look at this. John West lost us, X amount of money. It's like, no, that program ended,
Well, so what they're talking about isn't this.
Yeah.
So what they're talking about is they're saying the Pike Fork I cost the county $2.3 million. I didn't cost the county $2.3 million because if we would have sold the Pike Fork property, that $2.3 million by statute has to go into the forestry program.
Yeah.
We don't get it it stays in the county, but in their forestry program, we have to go buy more timberland with it.
So if I'm not mistaken, I actually spoke to the director of the Department of Forestry, and I was asking him,
Dave
Streeter, that's what
Yep.
it was. I was trying to think of that name. Yeah, so Dave Streeter, he told me, because I asked where the funding for this type of stuff went, and he told me that the majority of it is meant to go towards basically operational costs for the Department of Forestry, meaning that, all their little programs that they do. And then the remaining amount, he actually seemed like he maybe wasn't sure, but I think he was saying that it goes to a general fund for the county, or that it goes to law enforcement. Do you know about what that is? So just to clarify, what Dave Streeter told me is that their operational costs are, X number of dollars, and that usually there's a few million that comes in from the forestry department that is then given to either a general fund or to the sheriff's departments or the law enforcement. And so I think, is that sort of where these petitioners were getting at, is that this would have exceeded the amount that was necessary for the Department of Forestry's operational expenses, and that it would have gone to the general fund, or
No. There's
okay.
None of it goes to the general fund.
Okay.
So if we would have sold the 320 acres, that money by statute has to go back to forestry, and they have to buy more timberland with it. Okay. None of it can be used for operation cost. Because it's the timberland. Now, if we would log the timber off of it, that money pays for replanting, pays for the cost of the forestry program. The money that's left by statute can be sent to juvenile justice and veterans. But
so there is a set purpose for it if it exceeds the Department of Forestry's operational costs.
But right now, we're not exceeding it because the timber market's down. We were off on revenue, even though we sold 6.5 million board feet, somewhere in there. We're still off in revenues.
Yeah.
So when they make this claim, right now we still have the 320 acres. There's $2.9 million worth of timber on it, and we still own the land. So the county did not lose $2.3 million. And then they talk about this, Mr. Meredith talks about, the county lost $3.1 million by not doing this mining adventure. We didn't lose $3.1 million. Go back. They never guaranteed we were going to make one penny. They wanted to take over chunks of county timberland and get investors to invest in it, to mine it. But at the end of the day, they never guaranteed us a penny. So when they come up with $3.1 million, we didn't lose no money because they weren't guaranteeing us a penny.
So it sounds like we're kind of getting into the petition stuff anyways. And so maybe would you be able to give a brief overview on... Actually, honestly, first of all, what I would like to ask you, we'll get into the Pike Fork property, we'll get into the stuff about OSU Extension and all these kind of grievances that they have with the petition to recall. But could I ask you first, what has been your personal relationship with Lily Morgan, or your personal experiences with her? Because obviously she was a county commissioner however many years ago. And I had heard that during her time as a commissioner that you had been fairly critical of some of her decisions, and that part of the reason for this petition recall was maybe a little bit of payback. But is that true? Did you ever have a good relationship with Lily Morgan? What was your experience with her before all this blew up?
So I met Lily Morgan for the first time at a royal family fundraiser. So it was a fundraiser for foster care kids. And Lily was wearing her, I'm running for county commissioner. And so that sparked about a 6-hour conversation of time on why should I support Lily. And I did. I voted for Lily. Yeah. I supported her.
Well, and obviously, as someone who owns multiple businesses, you would be interested in the person who's, running for commissioner. Yeah.
She told me all the things that I asked. She told me all the right answers. And so I support her. I voted for her. And, I tell people I'm not, I'm not going to make up that story. I did. I supported her. I voted for her. But then when she got into office, she wasn't there a big chunk of the time.
As far as actually physically, she wasn't working very often?
She spent her time in Washington, D.C. She spent her time in Salem. And her goal was not to serve Josephine County. Her goal was, in my opinion, I want to move up the ladder in politics.
I see.
And so she was using the taxpayer. She spent more money in travel expense than the other two combined. So she was using
That's on the county's dollar?
Yeah. She was using the money allotted for her travel expense and part of their money allotted for travel expense. And she was missing votes. Go back and look at the documents. Absent. And so I started doing FOIA requests. It really got me upset. And I said, listen, I voted for this lady and she's supposed to be working for me and serving me. And so, she went to LA to a conference one time. And so I did a FOIA request, and lo and behold, she charged the taxpayers for an Uber to take her to a baseball game. Had nothing to do with county business.
Was it a good game though?
I have no idea. She paid for
Was it at least a good team?
Yeah, she paid for.
Was this some college thing? That was
no, it was L.A. Dodgers.
Okay, all right.
And so she paid for the baseball game, but then on her own dime. But the taxpayers shouldn't have paid for the Uber.
No,
that was on her own time. So then she went to Colorado to see how they raised cannabis. We were growing cannabis in Oregon before Colorado ever thought about it. And so she in my take, she conned the other two commissioners in why she should go and spend taxpayer money. And then she goes to a Colorado Rockies game. Guess who paid for the Uber? Josephine County taxpayers. And I said, no, and she still today says, I can't believe you made me pay the money back for the Uber. The citizens should not pay for your stuff that doesn't have anything to do with county.
Of course not.
And so, I was pretty rough on her. I watched her like a hawk, and our relationship went south fast.
Do you remember when she was running? Because this was a little bit before I was paying attention. Do you remember the sort of things that she was running on, the promises she was making to the community that attracted you to her campaign in the first place?
Well, she said she had law enforcement experience because she come from the jail part, and that she was going to make sure that law enforcement stayed solid. And she'd had city council experience, so she said that she had the previous government experience, and so I thought she was pretty well-rounded. And then I find out department heads filed charges against her. People hated her, said she was mean, rude, obnoxious, and I'm like, geez. What is going on? And so I start looking at it. I can't even tell you how many FOIA requests, and it was shocking. And at one time I got kicked out. I was not allowed to go in the commissioner's office because Lily's person,
kind of a badge of honor in my opinion. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, Lily's person that she brought in to do her overseeing and try to run the commissioner's office in my opinion, to hide what she had going on, said that I was a threat to the commissioner's office. And there was only one other person excluded from the commissioner's office at that time, and that was a guy who threatened the commissioner's office with a gun.
Oh, interesting.
And so I made it very clear to the county.
Well, we are living in 2024 when, words are violence and all this stuff. So, she might have felt very threatened.
So the threat was that I was looking at stuff that I shouldn't be looking at.
Yeah.
And so I remember making a FOIA request one time. I wanted to see all the expenses on a trip, and the person that Lily had put in the office gave me all the financial documents of the county, routing number, everything, account number. and they didn't mean to. And I got Lily's and the county's, and I took that banking information in and set it at legal's desk, and their eyes got about as big around as a watermelon. And said, "Where'd you get this?" I said, "This was given to me in a FOIA request." And they ended up having to change. The county had to change all of their account numbers, banking numbers.
Oh, I can see that. That would be a huge risk, yeah.
But, here I am. I'm honest. I could have cleaned the county out in one weekend.
Wow.
And this person come from law enforcement and was supposed to know better.
Yeah, that's a huge fumble right there. Yeah.
And so the big straw that broke the camel's back, and I still have the file. It's about 4 to 6 inches deep. And I put a newspaper article out that Lily Morgan I took the newspaper out. She claimed that she had brought $20 million into Josephine County. And so I went down to Arthur O'Hara at the time. He was the financial director. And I said, "Hey, I need to know what's going on with the $20 million. And they said, "What $20 million? I said, "Right here. Lily Morgan says she brought $20 million into Josephine County. We've never seen no $20 million. We have no idea what she's talking about."
She spent it on a Mets game.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so she did a retraction, said, the paper got confused and I didn't really bring that money in. Well, that's not what was said in the whole article. And so I made a big stink over it because she misled the whole public thinking that she was bringing money that she wasn't, because she was trying to put the whole world on her back as I am the best. I am. And at that point I had my fill of her. And so we went off the rails. Everybody knows it. She doesn't like me. I'm not a big fan of hers. And so this whole thing, she becomes state rep. Dwayne Younker's going to run for state rep. She decides that she can't beat him. So she has to keep her purse system going. So
When was this that she was running for state rep?
It would have been for this cycle.
Okay. And she lost out to Dave Younker?
Well, she knew that she couldn't beat Dwayne Younker for state rep. She was already our state rep, and she was fulfilling the term, and her term would have been up this year. But
how long is a state rep term? Is it 3?
2. Is it? It's either 2 or 4 years.
Okay.
I'm not one, so I don't follow that.
Yeah.
That close. So she quit in the middle of her term, and then she got this job at Gold Hill as city manager with no experience at all. And that's from what I see in the newspaper and read, it's turning into a bigger train wreck constantly, which doesn't surprise me. But so here she is. And then lo and behold, a guy who's running for county commissioner shows up in my office one day, Pat Fahey, and he says, this is when the 17116 was going on, where they wanted to change the charter. That
wasn't this most recent one.
It was in May. Yeah.
In May, okay.
In May, when they wanted to change the charter, and he says, "I want to cut a deal with you." And I said, "I'm listening. I'm not a deal maker, but let's I want to hear what you got to say." Yeah. And he says,
did he at least do a Donald Trump impression when he said, "Let's make a deal"? Let's make a deal.
So he's sitting there and he says, "If you give me your word that you'll vote for a county manager, I'll stop 17116 from happening."
Interesting.
And I said, "Pat, I don't make deals like that.
Yeah.
I only make deals that are in the public's best interest."
Does the county commissioner have influence over the city manager?
The county manager.
Oh, county manager.
So the county commissioners hire
the county manager.
But the county manager is not an elected position, and the county manager average salary starts between $225 and $250. When it's fully loaded, you're well over $300,000. $3 to $375.
So I remember one of the main details with this charter that they were pushing was that they wanted to increase the number of county commissioners from 3 to 5, and they wanted to change the salaries to where they were less. They want to take it from is it a six-figure number for a county commissioner right now?
It's 92,000.
Okay, 92,000, and they wanted to basically take it down to like 30,000.
They wanted to go to 27,000.
27,000,
which they couldn't do.
Okay.
So their whole charter thing was a train wreck because they took the old charter, copied a lot of the stuff in it, and then added some new stuff. But in the old charter that started back in 81, it had already been through the courts and gotten fixed. And so they never put all of the stuff where it got fixed in, they went back to the old. And so it was a mess. And so, long story short is they wanted to, their goal was to do to 27,000, but I was already elected official. I had a 4-year term. Mm-hmm. And so they couldn't reduce my salary because the people had hired me to a 4-year term based on the wage.
So you're talking about actually like legally like implementing this, it wouldn't have actually
under federal and state law, they couldn't cut my pay.
Would it have just become active with the next elected positions, or
well, the problem is if this would have passed, it would have taken effect this year. Mm-hmm. And so when the two commissioners...
In other words, this November election would have been holding, not electing just 2 positions. They would actually add 2 more. It'd be electing 4 people.
So it would have been 4.
Yeah.
The problem with it is under federal and state law, is I would have been making 92,000 and 4 people would have been making 27. And you can't pay those 4 people less than you pay me for doing the same job.
Well, because it would just be awkward around the water cooler.
Well, it's not that. It's just, it's breaking the law. And so once that started coming out, they were like, okay, well, we don't have to do it for 2 years. Well, now you're paying 5 people instead of 3, and you're really taxing the budget. Plus you got a county manager that's costing over $300,000 a year. And we were going to have to cut deputies. We would have had to cut law enforcement to make this whole shenanigan work.
So it sounds like the actual process of implementing this would have been a really hairy situation. But do you know what was the actual motivation behind this idea in the first place? Was it just an idea to dilute voting power, or what was their pitch for it, as you know, to make it sound like a positive thing?
Well, their pitch was we would have 5 part-time commissioners and we'd only do 2 weekly business sessions.
Was it about diluting voting power? Or?
It was.
Okay.
That's exactly what it was. But by having a county manager, the county manager would have control and run the county. So the commissioners would only be setting policy.
Didn't they say that the county manager wouldn't have legislative abilities though? They would just basically be like a secretary, or?
No, so what they said was the commissioners will do the policy work, but the county manager will run the departments and department heads. So right now you have 3.
So that's still quite a bit of authority to give to the manager, who is not an elected position.
Yeah. And if you, the taxpayers, don't like it, you can't vote them out.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Fauci situation.
Yeah.
You know, nobody hired this guy and he's telling the whole country what to do, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so the whole thing went off the rails. But at the end of the day, it was like we were down to 4th down and a half yard to go. And lo and behold, Pat Fahey's big plan was, listen, you make a deal. We're going to get a county manager. He thought he feels he's going to get elected. And he thought, well, he told me, I said, well, who do you think would be do you have any ideas of a person you would put out front for county manager? He said, Lily Morgan would make a great one.
To be clear, this county manager position, does it not exist now? It would only exist with the charter change? Because right now...
Nope. The commissioners right now could appoint a county manager. You don't need the charter to do it.
Oh, interesting. Okay. It was just an element of the charter that they were including.
That was a selling point to the citizens that we're going to bring a county manager in and go to 5 part-time commissioners, and we're going to save all this money.
What was going to be the proposed salary for the manager?
The county manager has to be paid the average salary of a county commissioner of a county our size. Okay. And that was between 225 and 270, and it's it worked out closer to 250.
Okay.
Now that's not perks. Now you got to add everything to it.
Yeah.
So I ran the numbers, what it was going to cost for 5 county commissioners, a county manager. It was going to cost $1.5 million the first year. And right now,
for this charter change in general, or just
the charter
county
change
manager?
with the county manager, the cost of the 5 commissioners, and that was doing new offices, building, and all this. It was going to cost $1.5 million the first year.
Is that $1.5 million on top of the current costs, or is that just in general?
No, that would include the costs that we have now, which is so you have
what is the cost now? Because I mean, you have the commissioner's salary.
$124,000 is what I'm fully loaded is what I cost.
Is what you cost, and so times 3 for the commissioners. Yeah.
So it's around $400,000. So it was going to be $1.1 million more in costs.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I don't know if you ever been to Aaron Kubik's office as city manager, but if you go over there, he's got all of his staff.
I've invited him over for tea, but he doesn't respond.
So, he's got all of his staff, his own office, his own conference room, blah, 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 blah. We don't even have
pool
room
table.
for that. Yeah. And so here we have 5 commissioners, and we don't have offices for 5. And so Pat goes, well, we don't need offices for 5. They're only part-time. Commissioners can share an office. No, you can't. Because if I'm talking to you about a subject, I can't be talking about it and telling you, well, I'm going to do this and I believe this is right and this is what I'm going to do for you in front of the other commissioner, because in the ethics law, that could be considered deliberating because that person now is privileged to what I'm talking about. And they could go, oh, well, I see how John's going to vote. I think I like that. So
could you explain that a little bit, the deliberating thing and why that's not permissible?
So we have the open meetings law. Mm-hmm. So we have topics and subjects on our agenda. We are not to deliberate on what we think or how we're leaning or how we're going to vote until we get in the meeting where it's open to the public to
What
hear.
is the reason behind that restriction? Because I know, kind of like how we were saying, coming from the private sector, I mean, I would discuss with people while we're having coffee in the morning, like, hey, what do we want to do about this situation? So what is the purpose behind those restrictions?
So what it does is it when you have 3 commissioners or however many, it makes sure that you aren't doing your voting and your calculations outside of the meeting. And then the public goes, well, geez, it looks like you guys already made your decision. You're not supposed to even discuss it. And,
it makes the public feel like they're getting cut out.
Well, yeah. And that's what it was about. So we can, if you were commissioner, you could say, hey, what's on the agenda today? And I could say, oh, this. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you said, oh, well, racing cars on 6th Street's on there, I don't know if that's a good idea or not, then we're starting to deliberate because you're telling me what you think. And if I go, yeah, I agree with you, boy, we're upside down. That's a restriction for conversations you can have with private citizens or just with other commissioners or officials? With other commissioners, I've had Dan DeYoung sit in my office, and he's told me about his cars. We've talked about hunting. We've talked about all kinds of things. We've talked about, how he was in the county for 7 years at that time. And he said, in my 7 years, I've seen a lot of different things come and go, but we weren't deliberating. We weren't talking about an agenda item. We're just, and all that's fine. It's just, you cannot reach an agreement or talk where you're heading to reaching an agreement on a subject. And so so when you look at the ethics laws in the books, that's what you have to be very careful of.
Yeah.
But the rest of the time, we can talk all day long.
Yeah.
But people, so this group, they say, oh,
Well, and that was one of the complaints from the petitioners, wasn't it? Was that you had been violating meeting laws.
Ex HR director J.J. Schofield said, oh, I witnessed private meetings. No, he didn't. I would ask him, what were we talking about?
What was the whole thing with the lie detector test? Was that the guy who said he wanted you to take a lie detector test?
That's the Jay Meredith and Pat Fahey. Oh, take a lie detector test, and Pat will show that he never said that in your office. And if you were willing to take a lie detector test, so let's say I take one.
Yeah.
And it says I'm telling the truth.
I could tell you how to fake that, by the way, because I watched Mission Impossible. You just have to put a tack in your shoe, and then you set the stress levels for being very stressed with the tack in your shoe.
Oh, okay.
I'm ready for it if anyone wants to lie detector test me,
Well, so somebody said, boy, what do you think about the lie detector test? I said, what happens if we take it and I end up passing it? They're going to say, oh, well, there's something else wrong. I mean, you go to the Pike Fork. One of their complaints was that I own the neighboring property next to it.
Can we talk about that really quick too? So maybe if we could give like an overview to the viewers, would you like to explain basically from their side what the grievance was with the Pike Fork property?
So this had been going on 4 years, 3 years prior to me coming on the board.
The sale of the property.
The sale of the property to a small group of Williams folks.
It's county owned.
County owned. Okay. You, the taxpayer, can go on it anytime you want. And so this group wanted it because they said they wanted to save it from being logged, and they wanted always to be left open to the people. So I wasn't a big fan of selling it when I first come on the board to them, because they were a nonprofit, and under the law, we could take less money because they're a nonprofit than if you tried to buy it. You would have to pay full boat price.
What was the original price they had given for it that they were going to be purchasing it from the county for?
So when they started 3 years ago, it was they never said they were willing to pay it, but the first price that came out 4 years ago was $1.6 million. Now,
what was the acreage on that property?
320 acres.
I thought it was something like that.
Yeah. And so the timber on that time was about 5 million board feet. But over 4 years, it's grown about 500,000, 500,000 board feet a year. So here we are in 4 years later, there's almost 7 million board feet on it. So 4 years ago, price of logs, $650, $1,000.
1,000 board feet.
Yeah. A year ago, 1,100. So you see a $400 or $500, $1,000 price increase. The board footage has grown. So what does that tell you? It's worth more money. So the board had sent Dave Streeter and said, hey, we want you to recruise this, come up with today's price. And so he comes up with today's price at $2,760,000.
Okay.
So that was in 23. It's already grown another 500,000 board feet, worth X amount of dollars, even more today. So, but we had worked a deal with them. They said they had a yellow book appraisal, and in their yellow book appraisal, the appraiser appraised for $250,000 for rock and roads to be logged. And we're like, wait a minute, I thought you guys didn't want to log this. Why would you put in your appraisal $250,000 for rock and roads? I said, if the county logged it, we would log it during the dry season and not spend no money on rock. So we could keep that money for the taxpayers. And so, but anyway, they did that. And we said, listen, we're not selling to you for $2 million. You got to meet us in the middle somewhere. And so they raised another $300,000. And so we said, okay, you're there. So we started moving forward with the paperwork. And then at the last minute, they said, the water conservation group is putting up the money for this. And then when we get it, we're selling it to the BLM to get our money back. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we said we want some deed restrictions on there because we already know the government, the BLM, that they block stuff off to the public all the time.
Is it important to you to keep that property open to the public?
Well, that was the purpose of their sale. They wanted it not to be logged. And two is they always wanted open to the public to look at the waterfalls, sing to the lizards, watch the squirrels run up and down the trees, whatever they wanted to do. I don't know. But that was their main focus.
Yeah.
Always open to the public. Then the BLM says, well, we can't guarantee you that it's always going to be left open to the public. There could be Port Orford cedar root rot. And
to be fair, that's not something that the BLM usually agrees to, is it?
No.
Yeah.
It's not. And so we told the BLM, we said, listen, we want to put a deed restriction in that you have to keep it open. And they said, we won't do it.
Yeah, because they're federal. They got to get permission that it's like they're not going to allow their. I think we'll do another half hour after this if you're okay with that. Yeah. No, we'll go just a little bit longer. So just to kind of clarify this for the viewer and stuff, basically there was the sale of this county-owned property to this kind of conservationist group, and after taking a second look at the property, you realized that the original bid was much too low, and so you came back with not the true bid, which was in the 2.7 millions, but you came with a kind of meet in the middle sort of thing.
2.32.
2 point. Is that what you kind of brought to him?
2,320,000.
Oh, that was the original. That was the appraisal. Okay, so the grievance that the petitioners had on this was that they were, for one thing, they thought you had a conflict of interest because they thought that you owned or had a friend that owned a neighboring property, and that turned out to not really hold any water because you sold your share in that company about 4 years ago. That's public record. It's pretty easy to find, so that's pretty easily debunked. But the other thing was that they, I guess they thought that you were just being unfair, or what was their grievance with you changing the price on this property? And one thing that I know that they said was that this appraisal that you had done on the property, that it was not made public, and they thought that that was fishy. So can you explain why the appraisal was not made public? And also, well, I'll just have you explain that. Why was the appraisal not made public?
So we told them what the appraisal value was, but we told them we're not giving you a copy of the appraisal because it's our confidential appraisal. It's not to be published in the public. So if this group chose not to buy it, we didn't want that appraisal floating around out there in case some other buyer come in and said, oh, I got their appraisal. I want to work off their appraisal number and try to work us down or whatever, because by the time now, there's 500,000 board feet more timber has grown since the previous year of that appraisal. So that appraisal's not accurate. Somebody else, if they got that appraisal, they said, I want to give you $2.7 million for it. And we would have said, no, it's worth more than that. And they go, no, I got your appraisal right here.
Okay, but one of my question was like, did you have the capacity to release the appraisal? Would it have that much of a negative effect? And it sounds like you're saying your concern is that somebody might use it to negotiate down on you to purchase the property, or what was the real risk with releasing the appraisal?
So I own timber and timberland, and I sell it at times, and sometimes it's got timber on it. So I don't release the crews on my own personal stuff unless if you're the buyer and you want to make and you put money down, it's non-refundable, I'll give you the crews. Because then I know, boy, you got some skin in the game and you're probably not going to back out. But at the time, they hadn't put no money down and they wanted their money refundable in case the deal didn't go through. And so I would never give you my crews on my property. So that is, it's standard.
Okay. Yeah. And obviously I'm not familiar with real estate.
Yeah.
I was just, one of my things is that under the criticism, like, would have been better to just like release the appraisal, but this is coming from somebody who doesn't know much about it.
It really wouldn't have made any difference.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have made any difference except for they could have touted and we got their crews, anybody wants to see it. And so, when you end up not being the buyer, what do you need our crews for?
Yeah.
And so they say that it cost the county $2.3 million. Didn't cost the county a penny. So there's right now $2.9 million worth of timber on there. If we log it and took $2.9 million off there, we still own the 320 acres.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't lose money. The taxpayers actually have made more money by us not selling it.
Well, and that's why one of my thoughts was, for me, I mean, passing off more property to like a federal organization should always be done cautiously. And so one of my thoughts was could it be more profitable for us to keep the property? And so with that, is there a chance that the property will be logged and that the county will generate revenue off of that by selling the logging rights to loggers?
So there's a chance that the property will be logged, and there's a chance it'll be sold. Now, if we sell it, we're going to maximize its dollar out of it. We're not going to do what we had going on here.
So you're still open to selling it if the price is right?
Yep. Everything's for sale if the price is right. So what I would do as your county commissioner, if we sold a whole bunch of the timberland that we have in Josephine County, that's not a very good growing site. So you have your class 1 to your classes of growing sites. I would try to buy as much timberland on the Coast Range. You get 2 or 3 cuttings for every one we get here.
Because the climate is...
The timbers grow, some of that timber grows 8 feet a year. When you're growing trees 4 to 8 feet a year in here, you're growing them 16 to 20 inches a year on a good site.
Does the county own coastal timber property?
Not that I know of.
Well, because we're not a coastal county, but
there's some for sale. So we don't need to own all of the taxpayers' timberland. Doesn't need to be inside of Josephine County.
Okay,
it can be in Coos, Douglas.
That's interesting.
And another reason for owning that timber on the Coast Range, it hardly ever burns.
Oh, yeah. So it's a low-risk investment.
Very low risk.
Yeah.
Grows faster. You get more cycles of cutting.
Yeah.
Weyerhaeuser, the Millicoma Tree Farm out of west of Winston there, I think they're on their 7th cut since they've owned it.
Interesting. Yeah.
We're on our 2nd cut in the same time period. And how much money could we create for juvenile justice veterans, and we wouldn't have to cut as much timber a year if our yield was better,
was greater. So I remember one of Lily Morgan's complaints, or really just the petitioners in general, was that the delaying the sale of this property was basically missing an opportunity to generate some revenue now that you could then use to purchase additional property at a better price. Did you not see this as an opportunity to maybe purchase some of that coastal property that you were interested in? Like you just thought that it wouldn't have penciled out to do it that way?
So I always looked at it day one, but I was trying to follow what the board before me, and I was very hesitant even about doing this deal all the way up. But I was trying to hold true to what they wanted. And when they stood in front of the Board of County Commissioners and said, "We don't care if this is left open to the public," I said, "Then why are we taking less money?" And they go, "Well, we couldn't care less. We don't want it in the county's hands." Well, show me how the BLM and Forest Service, how they are good stewards of our land. Mm-hmm. That's all of us as land. They don't, I'm not saying you got to clear cut it, but they don't log it. They don't do select logging hardly. They don't hardly do anything. It just grows up and burns. And when it burns, they don't even go and take the trees out.
Well, that was one of my thoughts too, is, like I said, as someone who prefers small government, someone who prefers to keep things local, like one of my first thoughts was like, well, I kind of understand wanting to keep a property local. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't want to, focus on that one too much, because it sounds like in a way it's been pretty thoroughly debunked.
And I don't own the property next door to it.
And that's pretty clearly seen, yeah.
They went from, I guess he doesn't own the property to, he's doing it to benefit his friend.
And his friend was going to build a water slide and a jacuzzi, and he was going to invite you over on weekends. And it's all just they were just kind of grasping at straws. So I understand that. There's a few other things on the petition that I guess we could briefly go over, but once again, a lot of it seems to be fairly easily debunked. The problem with the OSU Extension, essentially, they were saying that you defunded the OSU Extension program, which that's like the 4-H program as well as Master Gardeners and different community programs, and they were saying that you defunded it. And from what I understand, the actual story was that they did not present the proper paperwork in order to receive the funding, and so it was kind of on them. Is that accurate?
It's 100% accurate.
Yeah.
We asked for a true accountability. We wanted to know. We specifically asked them for where is all the money spent? Where does it go? They had $149,000 of travel expense in their budget. Why? Who's traveling $149,000?
To go to baseball games with Lily Morgan.
I guess so. So they were charging kids $20 to get into 4-H, a $5 late fee if they haven't paid by December 31st. And I said, how much money have you collected from these kids, and how much money did you collect in late fees? They said, we don't have to tell you. They said, that's our money. I said, no, it's not. The kids are from Josephine County.
Like, have you guys ever heard of a government? Like, I mean, what are you talking about? Like, just get to say our money.
So,
I would love to sign up for a government program where I got to have that kind of, discretion with it, you know?
So they were on poise to collect $441,000 of property tax money, and that's 0.459, 4.5 cents. So they were on tap to get $441,000, but when they get the $441,000, they get another $965,000 of grant money from the state and federal government.
The $441,000,
but if they don't get the 441, they don't get the 765.
Okay.
So they have to get the 441.
So they needed that approval from you to get this additional grant funding.
Right.
Okay.
And so we said we need accountability of what you do with the 765,000. That's our money. We don't have to tell you. Well, wait a minute. You don't get it, and that money, it says that money has to be spent in our district.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we'll tell you what we spend it on. 14.4 employees at Corvallis, Oregon. And I said, how does 14.4 employees benefit Josephine County, Master Gardeners, 4-H, all the programs? And they said, well, we bring those employees down. And so I said, okay, I want accountability of how much each person spends in Josephine County, how much of their time is spent. We don't have to give that to you because that's our employees. And it's like, well, wait a minute. What do we get around this place?
Yeah.
You want us to improve. You want us to pass a budget, but we don't have rights to the documents.
Yeah.
And
I think it's even more important to pay attention to how that money is being spent, considering that they had that whole faith issue with the 4-H program, and huge number of people just left the 4-H program.
Went to Youth and Ag, Josephine County Youth and Ag.
Yeah, and Youth and Ag did really great. That's just a private thing, the Youth and Ag thing. Yeah, they just started it up. So, I mean, they should have expected that you were going to ask for a new budget, after, basically this huge portion of their expenses left. I think that whole thing is pretty reasonable, the way that it was handled. If there's something I don't understand about it, then
no, it's you got some folks upset, and Master Gardener said, "Oh, you took away our Master Gardeners." No, we didn't. We have offered, and this Thursday at 6 o'clock, 6 to 8, we're asking leadership from Master Gardeners, gun shooting, the bee keeping, all the different programs to come, and we want to talk about how can we get these programs back, how can we fund them, and all that. A lot of them are like, no, without OSU, we can't exist. No, you can't exist. If you're a kid and mom and dad dies, do you just go away? You have to exist. You have to find a way to live your life.
If my mom and dad died, I would just go Batman and start being vigilante, for the record. But
okay,
yeah.
Well, yeah, you're an overachiever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, I mean, it's kind of people probably won't like that kind of concept, but I said, OSU's gone. I said, how about we take the money and we split it up and like master gardeners get like.
Oh, so you offered a way to fund master gardeners.
Yeah. And I said, so
method.
if we were able to give master gardeners like $50,000, they've never had money like that. And they booed me in a meeting and said, we don't want the money. We want OSU. And it's like, what? So OSU.
That's so odd.
OSU got the 2 buildings, which were the taxpayer for $1 a year. 2 buildings. One 7,000 some square feet. The other one was 2,700 square feet. And so the master gardeners behind the buildings had their greenhouses, and they're still there. And OSU charged them $2,000 for water and electricity for their greenhouse and their buildings. And I'm like, why are you charging these people money when they're part of our community and part of this program? And OSU had a great racket going on here. I mean,
it seems like the racket was based on a lack of accountability, honestly.
Yeah, and so when I come on and the first thing that triggered it was Joe's Place. And then the second was the budget. And oh boy, nobody liked it. Nobody liked being held accountable. Well, I'm held accountable. Taxpayers hold me accountable. If I make the wrong decision,
accountability is what government thrives on, honestly. Anything done in the dark, especially when it comes to government, which is kind of has a propensity to waste money and, be a little shady. Accountability is essential for an effective government. So, I think once again, that stuff was pretty easy to debunk and see the truth of. There's a few more things that they go through on the petition. People are welcome to go to their website, recalljohnwest.com, and look through it all, and then also read your response, which was posted in the Eagle. And
the sneak preview.
And in the sneak preview, okay. And I'm sure it can be found online as well. I think it's online on the Eagle. But when I was going through the petition, being someone who tries to look at things in an unbiased way, I did not assume malice out of the petitioners, but I wanted to see if there's any legitimacy to any of the claims. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about and gain more clarity on is they had complained that there were campaign finance laws that were broken. And essentially, when this measure to change the charter came out, you would put out some ads in the sneak preview, or where did the ads go out?
Sneak preview and Eagle.
So their complaint was that this was not reported to ORSTAR, which is the campaign finance authority, and that based on the estimation of what these ads would have costed, it was something like a few $1,000s, and that would have been over what had to be reported. Is that true? Is there legitimacy to that? Did you fail to report this? What was the story on that?
So I spent more money on signs than I did the ads, I think.
Okay.
So, but your combination together, I spent quite a bit of money.
Do you have an estimated cost of what you spent on this?
I'm going to say, I'm not sure, $6,000-7,000.
And this was just private funds from your own store?
From me. Mm-hmm. So nobody else. So they turned me into campaign finance. And at the end of the day, I'm an individual.
Okay.
I don't have a PAC. I don't require ORSTAR, because under freedom of speech, I can put anything in the newspaper I want, and I can put any sign up I want as an individual.
So are the campaign finance laws based on funding that was generated from campaigning and like funding that came from the public,
Yeah, I didn't pay for anything out of my PAC account where I was elected. Mm-hmm. That money, I never touched it.
So that was all on the up and up. You were allowed to do that.
All on the up and up. I paid for it out of my own pocket. And so when I was questioned about it, I said, listen, under freedom of speech and under my right, and everybody put their hands back and said, oh, you're doing this as an individual, you're fine.
Yeah.
And so there was no campaign law violation. This is just made up for a talking point.
Yeah.
0. I got no violations. Nobody cares.
So this brings me to some of the ethics charge things, because I believe this was one of the ethics charges. There were originally 13 ethics charges brought against you. And the last I heard was that 11 of them had been dropped or dismissed.
I think might be at 16 to 19
There's
now.
more now?
Oh, yeah.
What is the process for bringing an ethics charge against someone? Can anybody do it?
Yep. Anybody can do it. So
It's just something you file with the county? Or?
Yep. No, you don't file it with county. You file it with the state ethics board.
Okay.
In Salem. And so what you do is you write my name. What they do is they write my name, county commissioner, the address, and this is the reason why he violated campaign or ethics, state ethics laws. And they put this down, and then the ethics board gets it, and they hand it to an investigator. And the investigator looks at it and says, okay, well, this is interesting. I better look into this and ask some questions and see if it's true. And so then the investigator has to take it to the ethics commission and say, I recommend this go no farther. I can't find anything to validate it. Or I am bringing it to the board for their preview to see what you think.
Do you know what the current state of the ethics charges is? Do you expect them to be dismissed?
I just got it. We just received one Friday. We did a 2-hour Zoom meeting with the state, and they dismissed another one that J.J. Schofield, the ex HR director, had filed against all 3 county commissioners, and I was one of them. And
ex HR.
Yeah.
Disgruntled employee.
Yes. Very disgruntled.
We've had a few of those.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And I'm glad Jackson County has him. Yeah.
Oh, is that where he is now?
Yeah. Yeah. So, so anyway, they dismissed it, lack of standing.
Yeah.
And so every one of them, not one has been proven yet. There's one that I didn't get the notice on. They didn't send me the notice, and so it got moved to December, January, and then I'll get my shot at it, and it'll get dismissed.
Yeah.
Oh, my lawyer and me both have talked to the investigator, and he said, "Listen, now that I've gotten the facts," he says, "this is going nowhere."
Okay, so you feel pretty confident they're going to be dismissed.
Everyone will be dismissed.
Okay, that's good. Well, that's good. That must be some nice peace of mind to have.
But if you listen to this group talking to the public, oh my gosh, I'm a bad guy because of all these ethics charges.
Yeah.
They're made up charges.
Yeah.
They're bogus.
Yeah.
Now, so this is the same thing that I relate to that Trump's going through. You can make all these bogus claims and all this. So what I want to relay to the Democrats that are doing this and behind this, be careful what you wish for. Because one day you might get in office and somebody else might do it to you, and then you're not going to think it's very funny.
Yeah.
Because right now, this is going to push towards $20,000 of taxpayer money that it's going to cost before this is over with for no reason at all when they all get dismissed. And this group doesn't care what it's costing the taxpayers, because I'm covered under insurance and they have to pay my attorney fees. Mm-hmm. And so that's what these people are costing all the taxpayers here in Josephine County money for nothing, just as a vendetta to try to get to me.
Yeah. I don't want to keep you too long, but I have a couple other things that I want to go over. So apart from all this petition to recall stuff, we'll see where all that stuff goes. Last time that I reached out to the group, they said that they expect to actually get enough signatures, which it doesn't take all that many signatures to get it done anyways.
6,500.
6,500? Okay, good ones, because usually some of them get kind of thrown away if they weren't legitimate.
You need about 20%.
Higher
on average. So they need somewhere around the 78 to 8,000 signatures.
I think they said they were shooting for like 8,000.
Yeah.
So regardless of all this stuff, what is sort of what do you view as some of the more important issues for the county right now, and what is kind of your goal moving forward, expecting all this recall stuff to kind of just be thrown out?
So what I'm focusing on and still moving forward, my goal is to try to save the taxpayers $3 million this year.
Okay.
by cutting of vehicles, restructuring departments. We've already restructured. We've moved HR with finance. We've moved parks and fairgrounds together. We have moved IT and emergency management together. And if there's more we can move, that's a $200,000 savings every time.
So, as someone who's a fan of limited government, cutting budgets sounds super important to me. Are you also paying attention to the other side of it, which would be helping the county to generate revenue as well? Because one of the things that is always really impressive to see is if someone cuts taxes but increases revenue, because what that means is that those tax cuts basically increase the prosperity of businesses and of the local economy. So, do you have any visions on how to cut red tape for businesses, make things easier for businesses to grow, anything to take care of that other half, which is increasing revenue for the county, and also just for everyone in general?
I've got a big vision. I would like to cut fees by 30%.
Okay.
So when you come to the county and need something, I'd like to be able to cut fees on average by 30%. Do I think I can get there? I think there's an avenue, but is 20% more realistic? Probably. But if every time you come to the county and you had to have something done, you paid 20% less, that's 20% in your pocket. Mm-hmm. So if we can cut the fees on building a house, an average home now is somewhere between $9,000 and $11,000. If we can cut $2,000 out of it, that's huge.
Cutting building costs for new homes would be incredible for the community. Yep. Because one of the things is when you cut housing costs down, you increase the number of people that can move here, and so that's definitely a huge benefit as well. And also, of course, the thing is, I suppose cutting taxes and cutting the budget down in general does stimulate the economy, because one thing that's been true for the beginning of time is that government is inefficient at spending money, and any amount of money that you can put in the community's pockets instead usually ends up being used for a better purpose and helping the economy more. So are you focused on any other issues? Do you have any interest in homelessness, or do you treat that as like a more of like a city problem, or are there any other issues that you're focusing on?
Well, our biggest homeless problem is in the city. Mm-hmm. Not saying we don't have some homeless issues in the county, but the biggest is in the city, because that's where your water, your stores, everything is available.
Oh, I'm right by the train tracks here, and I just see people coming all the time. Some of them just whatever, down on their luck, normal people. Obviously, drugs is a huge part of it. Had a dude come across my parking lot one day. I was coming into the studio here, and he's just cussing up a storm. He's in a rage about something. I just go immediately inside. I just want to ignore him. I hear a crash outside. I walk outside. The dude came up and I have a street bike, a motorcycle. Dude came and pushed it over. Okay. And I go out and I look at him like, what the heck, man? And he rushes me like he's going to fight me. And I like stood my ground. And I was like, if we're fighting, because you can't back down. That just encourages them. He ended up storming off or whatever. But no, it's the city issue is it seems like it's mainly a city issue. I know that because I'm right here by the train tracks. I'm right here by all the stores and stuff, and it's primarily a drug problem. So is it something working with the sheriff? So I'm working with because sheriff is county.
So 110 was a disaster when that got passed, and it's still not fixed. They think they put a Band-Aid on it. So what we have done recently, we passed the ADU ordinance. Mm-hmm. So you can build up to 900 square feet. If you have a piece of property and say you have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house on it, and you would like to build another smaller up to 900 square feet, you can build that second structure on it now.
Okay.
So you have accessory dwelling units, ADUs. So, that is getting 2 homes on one piece of property. So sometimes, let's say,
I feel like that's going to be really beneficial.
Yeah. Say you got a nice house and everything, and you and your wife are like, mom and dad are getting old and we'd really like to bring them on.
Pop a tiny house on that place.
Yeah.
And you're all
so
happy.
You build a 900 square foot house.
Yeah.
And then they sell theirs. Now somebody else gets, and now you have brought them on your property. So now they sell theirs. It creates more homes for people. And so it helps our housing, and but it also allows you to to have them right there so you can help take care of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because not everybody can afford one of these living assist centers, that cost $5,000 or $8,000 or $10,000 a month. Not everybody can afford that.
Yeah. Okay, we got a couple more minutes here.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you one more thing. How are you feeling about, because if this recall doesn't go through, you're going to be in for another year and a half. It's 2
years.
Oh, you're going to be in for 2 more years. So how do you feel about some of the other commissioner candidates? Is there anyone that you would prefer to work with apart from the others?
So everybody knows I made it very clear. I support Chris Barnett and Ron Smith.
Okay.
Pat Fahey, in my opinion, I already have explained what the problems with him. I like Colleen Martin.
Maybe this will be Ron Smith's finally gets in. He's been trying for a while.
I like Colleen.
And I would like to have all of them on the podcast.
I like Colleen Martin. She's a great lady. But I think Chris Barnett and Ron Smith are the 2 people for the job. They're very conservative. They have a lot of the same mindset. And I just feel like that I could work with them very well. We're not always going to agree on everything. I can tell you that already.
Yeah.
But I think they're the right people for the job and to help move our county and our economy for what's best for the citizens.
All right. I like that. Are you planning on running for re-election when your 2 years are up?
That's my plan.
Okay, I like it.
Yep.
We'll see how all this stuff goes in the next couple of years. And I mean, if the stuff that you're talking about has the effects that you're hoping, then there's no reason that you shouldn't stay there.
So I have some big goals. We're selling the Lark. It's supposed to close hopefully in the next 45 days or so.
Yeah.
And I want to see the new amphitheater built on the river at the fairgrounds.
That'd be brilliant.
And I want to see our own, whatever we want to call it, Rogue Music Fest. Yeah. I want to see that amphitheater going. I want to see
bring in some tourists
and bring in some money into Josephine County. And I want to see the new improvements. If the fair board wants to do a water park, water slides, I want to see all that.
Yeah. Okay, we're out of time, I guess. John, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for being here. Yeah, I'm looking forward to everything you're talking about.
All right.
Sorry, I got